All right, so we are on the first question. Which equation in slope-intercept form represents a line that passes through the point 6, -1 and is perpendicular to the line y equals 2x minus 7? Right here is just information about perpendicular lines and making sure we knew what slope-intercept form was, and we jumped into step 1 to identify the slope that will be perpendicular to the line given, and our question is, how do you find out how it is perpendicular to it? So thank you for your patience on the short recap. So the line given is y equals 2x minus 7. And to answer the question, how do you find out how it is perpendicular to it? First, you're going to want to find out the slope given. So identify the slope given. Yes. So it is 2. And now if we go up here under perpendicular lines, the slopes are opposite in sign and are reciprocals. So a perpendicular slope would be, since 2 is positive, this one will be negative. And how are you going to, as you said it, just flip it? This is 2. Correct. So it would be 1 over 2, as you just said. So a perpendicular slope would be -1/2. And now the question was asking us to put it into slope-intercept form, right? So we can take this, so step 2, plug in perpendicular slope found into slope-intercept form. Y equals mx, and the m is our slope, so we would have -1/2 x plus b. Okay, so now we'll be jumping on to another one. So going back to the question, it says, which equation in slope-intercept form represents a line that passes through the point 6, -1? So now the question is this point 6, -1 the y-intercept? Because if it is, it saves us a lot of work. And how do you know? Because you're correct, it's not the y-intercept. And how did you know? Sorry, I was talking and I was like moving things and I forgot I had muted myself. Okay, so that was a good solution on figuring out how to get -1. The -7 is y value though, and the 6 is an x value. And so those two are completely different on the coordinate system. One's horizontal and one's vertical. So if we go up here and remember that the y value, that b is a y value of the y-intercept point, and the y-intercept point will always have a coordinate as 0, b, and that is because the y-intercept always lands on this line, somewhere on that line. It could be up here, it could be down here. It doesn't matter. It will always be on the y-axis. And on the y-axis, the x-coordinate is 0 because you haven't moved to the right or to the left any. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we come down here and we check that it's, if it is, to see if it's the y-intercept, see how this has an x-coordinate of a 6? So it's not the y-intercept because the x-coordinate is 6 and not 0. Did that make sense? Okay, so now then I guess the next step would be, how do you find the y-intercept? Right? Okay, so the next step is to find the y-intercept. And to do this, we're going to use the coordinates of the point given, which was 6, -1 in the question, and substitute them in for the x and the y in the slope-intercept form we have, in the equation we have from step 2. You ready for that? Okay, so then we would have the y-coordinate is -1, so I'm going to substitute that in for the y. And the x-coordinate, remember this is multiplication right here, so I'm going to just put parentheses so I remember. And the x-coordinate is 6. So we're going to substitute that in. Which gives us this. And then we're going to simplify. So we have a -1 is equal to -1/2 times 6 would simplify down to a -3 plus b. And then the next step is to solve for b. Would we subtract a -3 or would we add 3? Right. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, paste it, and you had said to add 3 to both sides. And the reason we do that is to reduce this down to 0. So -1 plus 3 gives us 2. And that equals -3 plus 3 is 0. And then we have plus b, and 0 plus b is more often just written as b. So you with us there? Okay, so then the next and final step is to substitute the found b, the found y value into the slope-intercept form equation that we have in step 3, which was this. Whoops. Which was y equals -1/2 x plus b. So now we're going to substitute that b for 2. So you with us that way? Okay, so then we would look for in your solutions the y equals -1/2 x plus 2, and that equals, and that's just the very first one that it's given. Do you have questions? Okay. Okay. So